The next wave of business leaders won't just use AI, they'll master momentum with it, starting now. Welcome to the Mastering AI Momentum Show, where visionary founders and driven business leaders turn artificial intelligence, automation, and scalable systems into real growth, real scale, and real freedom. If you're ready to break bottlenecks, reclaim your title, and scale smarter, this is your playbook. Let's dive in. Here are your hosts, Allie Porter and Elise Smith.
Welcome to the Mastering AI Momentum Show, where we explore how the world's most innovative leaders are using AI to scale their business and amplify their impact. I'm Elise Smith, your AI business strategist with Millionaire Momentum, and we help founders and marketing leaders stuck with unpredictable client acquisition and wasted time on strategies that don't convert with the right AI systems and strategies that scale predictably and also attract the right fit clients. So today I'm joined by someone who is truly redefining how small businesses sell and serve through AI. So Joe Gagnon, thank you so much for being with us today.
Elise, thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. So Joe is the CEO and co-founder of Rainmaker, the first AI native sales platform designed for small businesses. He's also a 6-time CEO, ultra endurance athlete who ran a marathon on 6 continents in 6 days, and author of Living Intentionally. Joe's mission is to help leaders harness AI without losing humanity, and that's exactly what we're going to be talking about today. So, Joe, you are a fascinating guy.
Thanks. I appreciate it. Every time you hear your own introduction, you always sort of wonder, oh my gosh, what did I do? Thanks for that.
No, that's wonderful. Have you always been an athlete? Like, is that just who you, like, in your blood?
Not at all. I would say that, the first half of my sort of adult life, I was really good at working, and that's all I did. I career focused, back in the white collar blue suit day. And then I had this sort of moment where I felt like, oh my gosh, success was starting to suffocate me a little bit. And I thought I needed to do more. So I left the big firm, took an 80% pay cut, joined my first startup, oh my gosh, back in 1999. And I focused on, how to bring at the time, e-commerce platforms to the retail market. And so built that company, we sold it. And then just on this, combined path of building businesses and building myself. So I started running. I wasn't capable initially of running a mile, let alone doing a push-up. And here I am, 58,000 miles of running later, and 500 push-ups a day kind of feeling. So, but it's been a really good harmony. I like the integrated life. I'm not shooting for balance on anything. I'm trying to perform at a higher level, live intentionally, have a plan. Tech really fits into that. And this lifestyle sort of almost demands that we bring our best self. And the way we bring our best self is to have, the pillars of healthy living, exercise and nutrition, sleep, mindset, and community. All those elements matter to how we show up in what we do. So yeah, it's been phenomenal second half of life. And I'm going to keep on this path for a while.
That's so awesome. I know, isn't it interesting that there is such a huge correlation between your finances and the growth of your business with your health? Because if you're not taking care of yourself, I mean, I think there's a phrase of like, the way you do one thing is the way you do everything, right? Mm-hmm. And so we can tell how dedicated you are to taking care of yourself. And that, of course, gets passed along to your clients and your team members and all of that. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I would say the other thing is, there's this always in tech, there's this whole thing on, build a unicorn. I'm always like, build yourself into a unicorn. Then a company unicorn will come from that because, people do invest in people still. And, through the 175 million or so that I've raised over all these different ventures, no one's just investing in me because I ran 6 marathons on 6 continents or any of that. But it is absolutely reflective of the way that I make commitments and how I follow through. What I told them 20 years ago is still true. Like I've worked out 9,000 days over the past 23 years. And past 13 years, I've written 4,700 days in a row, a blog post. So, if you can make a commitment and be consistent, you probably are going to make it through running a business and building it. That doesn't mean it guarantees outcomes, right? But that isn't the idea. No one's looking for a guarantee. We're just looking for, integrity in the commitment, in sort of what we're intending to do, and then became intentionality for me, which is more than just purpose, right? It's purpose with a plan, it's purpose with a follow through, it's understanding the role of strain, discomfort, suffering, all these things we hide from that are just part of the game. It's sort of fun to know that I've mastered that through all of these elements.
That is so cool. I love the resilience that you've been able to get through that as well. So tell us a little bit more about who you serve and how you serve them, because your bio just barely touched on that.
Yeah. I have spent a lot of my career in the enterprise, selling to the Fortune 500 and the Global 500. But it feels to me that we're at this sort of, inflection point where small and medium businesses are being somewhat left behind. The American dream, particularly of opening up a business and running it, seems to be more and more difficult. It takes over our lives. And it shouldn't be, right? There's 30 million small businesses in the United States. You shouldn't be sitting at your kid's soccer game on the phone trying to keep the business running. And so we want to help those small business owners get back to the elements of that American dream, which is to have a business that you run that's productive, that creates enough financial freedom for you, and delivers a service that you love. And so, but to be able to do that without big capital systems and structures, it's hard. And so we want to bring technology now with AI to their world so we can get them, as people like to say, democratizing capability down to the small business owner. And we picked what we think is the area that most small business owners really don't want to do, which is selling. Like, they love the product or the service that they're going to deliver. They love taking care of customers, but there aren't a lot of people who wake up in the morning saying, I really just want to do sales. And that's just because, it's not the core of the reason you started the business. You didn't start the business to be a salesperson. You started the business to deliver the service. So what if we could make that work better? What if we could have you spend less, sell more, and do it more predictably? What if we could get you only working 40 hours a week, even less, and being more productive? And if we could use AI to do that alongside the integration of the business, bringing our extensive sales expertise, then we're in, for something really interesting and impactful. So that's what we do.
I love that. So if someone is listening to this and they feel like they need your services, what are some pain points that they're having right now that you guys can help with? And how do you help with that specifically?
I think probably the number one that everyone would possibly agree with is like, I can't answer the phone all the time, and that phone call is a lead. That phone call is a service issue. It could be anything. It just cannot be in multiple places at one time. So that's like the first, like the symptom of a bigger problem. The second is predictability. They don't know month to month if they're spending too much money on marketing, if they're getting a good return on that. We don't know if we're maximizing on the opportunity in a local market. And then the third is that, they're having a problem scaling. Business might be growing, but can't find resources. It's hard to get consistency, and it's actually just too much for any one person to run and manage. So if we start to see that, we then know these symptoms, are of this sort of core issue, which is that you are trying to run a rather large enterprise with limited resources. And so, there are very few businesses that run 24/7 unless they're at operating scale. But the world runs 24/7. Imagine if you wanted to, I don't know, call up your lawn mowing company at midnight on a Saturday night. What are you going to get? You're going to get like an answering machine if you're lucky. But why couldn't we actually have you talk to our AI who can have the conversation you want to, schedule an appointment, take a payment, deal with a service issue, right? So we think that we're going to turn this upside down, right? Take all those issues and sort of wipe them out and make this productive. So as if you actually hired more people but didn't have to pay for them.
Yeah, and I love that. I know my husband and I, we came back from a trip from California back to Utah, and it was, I don't know, 10 o'clock at night that we finally came home. And it was the middle of July, which Utah in July is hot,
Yeah.
maybe not as hot as a lot of other places, but our AC went out. And we had a 6-month-old baby, and we had no idea what we were going to do. And I remember frantically calling up these different AC companies, and no one would answer the phone. It
Right.
was so frustrating. And so we had to just, make do for the night and try to get somebody the next day. But we do live in a 24/7 kind of world, and that would be so helpful. So you focus mainly on B2C kind of businesses, is that right?
Predominantly, yeah. So the lingo is we're a B, we sell to the B, right? We sell business to business, and that business sells to a consumer.
Perfect.
Predominantly, because we think that's the biggest pain point at the moment, right? There's there's 30 million businesses, and there's tens of millions of consumers out there, trying to navigate this world, which is hard to navigate. It's not that you can't go to the website. You can. The problem is you can only represent so much content in the web. And if you're going to make a decision around your home, typically you'd like to have a conversation with someone, understand how is this going to work. Maybe you want to know you need to get in the house if you're going to spray for mosquitoes. You might want to understand better what time of day services can be provided. You might just have a question about what happened the week before. So in that, we really want to make sure that that can happen whenever it needs to happen. And it just actually also, forget that it's just sales part's hard. Like imagine if you're the customer and you can know reliably that you can get the access to the information you want anytime you want it. That's very reassuring. And for us, that would be the best outcome for all small business owners.
Yeah, I love it. That is so beautiful. Well, cool. Well, thanks so much for talking a little bit more about what Rainmaker is and does. So let's talk about the behind the scenes of your business. So business is definitely a growth journey, like we've talked about. So what were some of the biggest hurdles that you faced early on, and how did you overcome them?
Oh my gosh, they're almost always the same, but they're still hard every time, which is, we all fall in love with the tech ourselves sooner than the world does. So like, really, why don't you want to do this? And so, there's a little bit of the early adopter issues that you got to get over, which is, especially with a shift like this, at least, we're talking about going from predominantly talking to people to predominantly talking to an AI, right? And now at some point you won't know the difference, but in the beginning here, there are people like, I don't want to talk to AI. And I'm always sort of like a little bit like, why would that bother you? But, beyond that, we want to just show that it can work. So part one is getting to the technology adoption curve and getting through that. The second, of course, is, we can think faster than we can build. Customers want it faster than you can build. So trying to marry up even as fast as we can develop in this AI-enabled world, marry up the product development lifecycle with the needs of the market. And then, of course, we have to be selling too. We got to create the brand. We got to create people understanding who we are, what's our message, how are we different, why are we better, good pricing model. So there's a lot of that structural work that has to happen in terms of brand and communication and awareness. So we go through the same thing that our business target customers are going through. We have to go through ourselves so everyone knows we're out here. And then the last thing is, I don't think that the war, quote unquote, for talent will ever change. You always want to get the best people. And if you're a small company, I don't know that I would say that I'm competing with Google and Meta and OpenAI, but in some sense, we are. And so we need to create an environment. We do that by building out a set of core values that people align with, starting with respect and being bold and nurturing and positive. So that's something you want to be part of. Technology is really fun. That part's easy. And then, of course, continuing to build a capital structure that sustains the company long term. So lots to do, a lot of moving parts, but, I love it. It's fun.
I can tell, absolutely. And I think that that gets passed down to the clients that you work with for sure. And especially because there's a lot of fears and concerns around AI right now.
Yeah.
So when you talk to someone, especially since you are in like the voice AI agency kind of side of things, like that part. What do you do to help them to really kind of accept that this is the way things are going and to embrace it as opposed to being afraid of it?
Well, there's a lot of things you have to do, right? First and foremost, like we actually thought about this. We wrote our own constitution. This is a set of rules and commitments that you uphold throughout everything that you do, so that there's the transparency and the understanding that we're not trying to manipulate, we're trying to educate. We're trying to bring better information into the process. We're not trying to overwhelm the consumer. We want to give transparency so that if something like a hallucination happens, we would see it ahead of time. So we're creating somewhat of a self-regulating world where we use our constitution as a way to both build our software and how we show up, so that you would, as a small business owner, feel confident we are representing your business as you want it represented. We're just giving you the tools effectively to bring your brand out to the market bigger and richer and deeper. Well, we wouldn't want to get in the way of that having integrity. So that really matters to us. And I think that is part of the responsibility that we have, as all of us have, as we get into AI, is to not sort of just let it go and do its thing, because we don't know exactly what that is, but make sure that, it is accountable. We are accountable. It's like any programming environment, any kind of system. It has to get to the outcomes that are the design, and we got to ensure that that happens consistently, and then be available. We're available ourselves 24/7, 365. If there's an issue, call us. We want to talk to you. We want to make sure we get it right. So it's all similar. At the same time, it's some different, because we are, although I don't know if people are perfect all the time either, right? Call a call center or go somewhere and someone had a bad day and all of a sudden you get a bad experience. So it's not like we're changing, from perfect to something else. We can get better, and that's what we aim to do with the right level of integrity and transparency, so someone feels comfortable with that.
Awesome. I love that. That is so perfect. And especially because there's so many things you can do in the AI voice world, right? Like because we have AI voice agents that we set our businesses up with as well. And it's fascinating because you can clone somebody's voice now, which I don't really like that idea, but that's just me. There's also the ability to make it sound more like an AI agent so that people know, and there's that transparency that it's AI, or, that you can have it sound really real lifelike, and people don't know. And I think that I really like how you created a constitution, right? Like that's something that every business needs to do, is really determine what AI can and cannot take over in their business, right? Like how does AI fit into their brand? Are they okay with it sounding just like the owner? Or are we more wanting it to be more like a robotic kind of feel so that people know? So I think it's those types of things that we need to think about as we're moving into this AI world is like, how does AI fit within your brand and how do you represent yourself through that? And I think you brought up a really good point there.
I think neuroscience is going through a rebirth, and not being just some esoteric idea, because there is this risk that we start to think that AI has intelligence, because we use this word, artificial intelligence. It's actually just good at assembling information, and it also is not going to be conscious. It doesn't have a felt experience. My team and I are sales experts. That's why we're building a sales platform. That is what we know and do. We've both built them, sold, trained, managed, all of that, right? We could spend at least, the next hour, if we wanted, talking about some of my most intriguing sales experiences. That felt experience of what is it like to close a $108 million deal on the last day of a quarter, when everyone was counting on that deal to be closed and the customer doesn't sign it when you expect them to. And you walk through that process of what would it take to come back to what everyone agreed to so you could get that sale done. Because, software, we live on a quarterly basis. The AI doesn't know that. It can't tell that story. It doesn't have that felt experience. And so we don't get captivated by artificial intelligence on the way to general intelligence as a replacement for humans. We're looking at addressing the issues of running a business that lives in a 24/7 world where the consumer doesn't see the boundaries of the cost model that you have, that you can't answer the phone at midnight, or you don't want your life to even be like that if you could. We want to build a set of capabilities that deliver more consistently on what it is you're trying to bring to the market, and do it in a way that feels as if they're talking to you. But it is not meant to say, look, I don't think we're going to be personally sending out a bunch of robots cleaning people's homes. That isn't what we're trying to do. We're actually just trying to make it's hard to run a business subscale. And if you can do that reliably, effectively, predictably, then it's good. It's better for all of us. But, as captivated as we are by what AI can do, we're not becoming pets of robots anytime soon.
Agreed. And I'm sure that helps somebody to take a big sigh of relief that people like you who are leading the industry in this type of thing, that you're thinking that way, right? That's not the whole point. The point is to create win-win scenarios. That person who's calling in can get that information quite quickly, right? And instantaneously, and they can even make the sale. I mean, that's one of the cool things about your software that I think in your system that you've built is that it's not just taking calls after hours and just booking appointments. You guys can do the entire sales process with these B2C kind of companies, right?
Yeah. And the reason we can do the sale part is because we have hundreds of thousands of recorded calls in our lifetime that we've saved, and we can use those to understand how the dialogue goes. Mm-hmm. So, we won't get too technical, but in the build out of an AI platform, right, first there's just some core stuff like data management, security, and all those things. But there's this new capability called RAG, this retrieval augmented generation, where we can build basically the essence, of a dialogue that replicates. Because really, at the end of the day, there isn't that much variability in the selling. We follow a process. We take a lead. We score the lead. We qualify the lead. We then make the offer. These are things that happen in a normal sales process. So we can model that. The dialogue, look, we all benefit from the likes of, for example, 11 Labs, which does a great job of turning a transcript into a voice. But the underlying magic is the workflow that we have in terms of how we qualify. We use this thing called adaptive neurobehavioral scoring to really think about how this person is moving through the sales cycle. And then we use our best practices from what's sold in the past to make sure that we understand the needs. And then, of course, we want to make it a surprise and delight moment for that consumer by both listening and giving them the information they need. We want to make consumers more informed, not manipulated. And the more informed you are, the more you'll buy, because you have a desire to buy. You just actually have to have that need met. It's really less about selling and it's more about buying in the most productive way. So, yeah, we don't think that just taking the appointment is enough. We want to close the deal, schedule the appointment, take the payment, input the data into a CRM, and make sure that this becomes just a repeatable process for all businesses.
Mm-hmm. So cool. Oh, how awesome. Okay, well, let's continue to kind of focus on your business a little bit more here. So I know that you've been able to do amazing things in your business, but there's always that next goal, right, that you're going towards. So if you had your dream business right now, or maybe you're already really close to it, what would you want to enhance or evolve next?
This is going to be sort of cute. For years, I worked in retail. And everyone talked about the surprise and delight moment. Can we surprise Elise with a surprise and delight moment? Whatever that might be. And I always thought that was a little bit hard because we were trying to guess what you might want, right? And we know sort of what the customer wants. So maybe we make life the surprise and delight moment, the way that you are able to navigate to your needs through the cycle of interacting through technology to businesses or services that you need. So that is some of the stuff we've been talking about, like fit it to the way my life is. Don't make it hard for me. Don't give me an IVR that I got to call into that tells me you don't want to talk to me. Don't make it hard for me to embrace the service. Rethink the entirety of the dynamic between the business and the consumer. And that surprise and delight is then because it's under your power. You do it the way you want. So predominantly then how that translates into our business is that sales and service are one. The customer doesn't know the difference. Mm-hmm. We're working with one company and we can, I went and early on, did a demo with the CEO and said, hey, let's do a sales call. We dial one phone number, talks to our AI, gets it done. I'm like, push the same number and do a service call, and it worked the same, right? It doesn't matter. The consumer doesn't think about it differently. So we want to think about a world that actually really does put the consumer first, the customer, if you want to call it that, right? In a surprise and delight moment all the time. And that means that we really have to own more of the end-to-end consumer process. So, into the future, it's going to be about getting the best leads, making sure that we nurture and qualify that lead the best way possible. When it creates to a customer, then support them throughout and make sure that that information is available to the business and the consumer when they need it. So it should be, a much easier life. It's like, I always think about your phone, right? I don't think you ever thought you would carry a flashlight in your pocket, a camera in your pocket, a phone in your pocket, and keep going, right? Your appointment book, like you couldn't carry all that stuff with you, but you do today, right? And it's that integrated mindset that we want to bring into the future so that you don't have to make a choice and remember to bring all of those elements with you in some big bag as you navigate life. You don't want to have all these different touch points to navigate through a relationship with a business. And that's what we aim to do. Make it so seamless and so easy that works for both parties, by the way, right? Then you stay a customer of that business for a long time, lifetime value goes up, cost to acquire goes down, and it's just better for everyone. So that's where we're aiming to shoot.
I love it. Sales through service, right? Like that's really, there's no difference. There's no difference whatsoever. So I love how you said that. Well, neat. Well, there's definitely some new things I'm sure that are coming down the pike in your company, and you probably can't even talk about those, but we are so excited about everything you're doing at Rainmaker. And if people want to follow you or learn more about your services, where do they go?
Yeah, of course, our website is great, rainmaker.ai. Now, Rainmaker spelled with a Y, RAYNMAKER, .ai. And, it'll continue to evolve. The website is better and better. We actually have a sample phone number that you can dial in and talk to our AI and feel the experience. We're doing some other stuff, at least we're actually getting on Instagram and on YouTube, so that because this is like a felt experience kind of sale, we want people to see and feel that. Of course, on LinkedIn, we're there. We post a lot on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn, Joe Gagnon. I have a lot of content that's out in the world. We just want to be open and available to people. Look, we're not smarter than anyone here. We're just incredibly focused with a really good plan and execution capability that we think we can be a great partner for people. We want to listen and learn. We want to figure out how to make this better over time. And so we want to sort of show that you can have a values-based, integrity-built company that's innovative, right? That's easy to work with. And so we are here to complement. If someone goes on the website, you'll see our pricing is very low for the capability we're going to be able to provide people. And that is because we want to enable small businesses to have this kind of capability. And so I'm going to be committed to that throughout. That's my commitment to everyone. And if anyone ever needs to talk to me, it's joe@rainmaker.ai. Email me. I'm happy to hear from you and do anything I can to help you.
Awesome. I love it. And you can tell just this guy's heart is amazing. So you need to check him out, especially because he really does have that balance between authenticity and AI and the tools that we have there. And the neuroscience and all of that behind it as well. So he's the full package here, and so is Rainmaker. And we really, really appreciate having you on the show, Joe.
Thanks, Elise. I appreciate your partnership, and we'll hope to get some good things going together in the future.
Absolutely. So thank you guys for joining us here at Mastering AI Momentum. To our listeners, remember, momentum doesn't just happen. It's built through intention, innovation, and action, all with the heart that Joe's been talking about the whole time. So we will see you next time on Mastering AI Momentum Show.
Thanks.
You've been listening to Mastering AI Momentum. If today's episode gave you clarity or sparked a breakthrough, share it, review it, leave us a comment, and show Ali and Elise how you're turning AI into ROI. And make sure you subscribe, because the next episode could be the strategy that unlocks your next level. Until then, build smart, scale fast, and let AI multiply your momentum.